Hey, it's Dave Brown here, host of Now with Dave Brown on AMI. Check out this latest highlight from the show. The new season of My Life in Books is set to debut on AMI Audio and the mighty AMI Audio Podcast Network. You may recognize Széll as the host of that show, and Red actually finds himself in Toronto for a visit, so we figured, why not bring Red into studio? First time we've had a guest since February, so let's see how this goes from a technical perspective. Good morning, Red.
Good morning, Dave. I'm delighted to be here.
Red, so nice to chat with you and meet you in person. You and I have connected a couple times over the interwebs as a guest on your show and a guest on this show before in the past. But what brings you to Canada? Why'd you take a little vacation here?
Well, I've got a friend who's having a 60th birthday party by Lake Muskoka. He lives in London, but his family's got a cabin here, so he's invited a few of us over to celebrate his 60th, and my wife and I thought we would take a well-deserved vacation somewhere different from England, where we normally spend our holidays.
Well, Muskoka in Ontario, there are very few places about as nice as Muskoka to go spend some summer days. So I hope that 60th ends up being a lot of fun. Red, the focus of your show is all about literature and books, and especially a focus on audiobooks. Why do you like that format so much?
I've always been a keen reader, and I think the hardest thing for me about losing my sight was losing access to the books that I love to lose myself in. And audiobooks have just seen an explosion over the last 10, 15 years. And it just means that we get all those books that all our sighted peers get to read as a matter of course, pretty much at the same time. And it's just reopened that world to me. And as more money's been spent on it, as they've got better and better narrators, the books are just so much more pleasurable to listen to.
One of the things that's come up a couple of times, in fact, it comes up frequently on your show, is when you bring in a guest, you don't just start talking about a book they like or something that you read recently. There's always a prolonged conversation about the love of reading. It's become sort of a focal point of the show. Why did you want to make that a focal point?
I think it's something that unites so many people from so many different backgrounds with so many different physical abilities or not, that we love storytelling. Storytelling is common to all cultures across all eras. It's how we pass on our knowledge, it's how we examine our dreams and our nightmares, and it's just how we rationalize our lives. And sharing stories is something really, really important and integral, I think, to human beings generally. And I don't think it's something we celebrate enough. In a world of increasingly personally selected ways of defining ourselves, I don't think we sometimes celebrate the things that we got in common enough. And certainly, in one of the new episodes that's I think it's the first episode for the new series, it's going to drop on the 4th of September, I'm talking to a Canadian author called Emily Urquhart, who's written a book called Ordinary Wonder Tales that examines how all cultures incorporate fairy tales into their culture. These fairy tales that are, in some cases, hundreds of years old, and how we use those to rationalise new and disturbing situations around us. And we've got the same we've got the same characters in our fairy tales in the West as they've got in Japan, as they've got in parts of Africa. Mermaids. Mermaids, in one way or another, appear in folklore around the world. And it's a way of exploring strange things that come out of the sea.
Red, I think what you're getting to there is a shared perspective, a shared experience. There's something that I'm doing here every day where I'm talking about the real world in real time. I'm reflecting on things on sometimes 20 minutes of notice as it's breaking across the wire. But one of the things that books do, it's that perspective that's zoomed out, but also zooms in.
Yeah.
And that's where I think books end up becoming such an integral part of culture, because that's where you can actually start grappling with the bigger ideas through perhaps personal lenses.
Exactly, it's a touchstone. It's a point that we've got to before, or that's similar to a situation that we're now going through, and we can just expand from that. It's like a stepping stone across a creek. It allows us to progress slightly further on safe ground that we've already encountered in some way, shape or form.
I remember in the late 2000s, I went through a real phase of reading books about India and Afghanistan. The Kite Runner, A Thousand Splendid Suns, A Fine Balance. There were all these books that I read about those parts of the world in little times of history. And that isn't to say those books should be a replacement for reading an actual history book and reading accounts, but there's something about it that makes it more digestible through that personal lens.
Exactly. Stories give you the culture. History gives you the facts. Okay, a good history will feed into the culture as well. But it's that nuance. It's that focus where you don't understand a culture unless you know what their stories are. And that's it. We go and visit people in foreign countries. We sit down and we talk, and sooner or later we're telling stories. Now, whether that's our own personal stories or the stories of folklore, they blend very, very quickly, and we're telling our own fairy stories and trying to find things in common with each other.
Red, the topic of artificial intelligence versus human narrator is a divisive one in the world of audiobooks. Where do you land?
Right, okay, there are lots of obscure books about rock climbing and mountaineering that have never been made into audiobooks. I would welcome an artificial intelligence voice reading those to me in a voice that sounded like one of my favourite mountaineers. If you could get it to pretend to be Chris Bonington, or Yvonne Chouinard, and I'm reading one of their memoirs, which I would otherwise never be able to get my hands on, then that's brilliant. However, you will never be able to replace a real narrator, a real actor who's doing that theatre for one that you get in an audiobook, because there's nuance there, there's expression, there's acting, and I'm not altogether sure that the AI voices that we've got at the moment can really act. They can ape, but there's a lack of creativity there that's really going to draw you into that story. Yeah, another one of the guests that I've got coming on is an Irish narrator called Aoife McMahon, and she's a very well-known actress, and she's kind of got that plasticity to her voice that she can occupy the part that she is playing for each of the 12 different characters that she's talking about in this book, Falling Animals, that I particularly love that she's narrated. And it is like having 12 different actors being presented to you, and I'm not altogether sure that AI is quite ready for that yet.
Especially in the last 10 years, there's been that significant evolution in terms of the focus and quality of human narration. Because there are a couple of my favorite books that have only been humanly narrated once, and it is bad. It sounds terrible. So it's a real reminder that maybe that AI can be, as you pointed out, an opportunity to bridge gaps. But when you get a great speaker doing those books, I think about the Obama biography. Hearing Barack Obama reading his biography mattered, because his voice gave it everything.
It gave it gravitas, and yeah, you have to hear him telling his story. Look, when my brother does up his old second-hand Land Rover cars, it doesn't matter who reads the Haynes manual. But yeah, no, you want Barack Obama telling his own story.
Red, the new season drops very soon, couple weeks, heading into season 3. It's super cool. It's a great show. I encourage folks right now, head over to their favorite podcasting platform, bookmark My Life in Books right now. You can listen to the past season. It's great. You can even find an episode with myself and Ramya Amuthan on there, which was a lot of fun.
High point.
But Red, let's go back to where this conversation started. You're in Canada. You are a noted outdoorsman. You like doing these outdoorsy things. I know you've only been in town for a couple of days, but what's on the agenda for some outdoor Canadian activity here?
Well, yesterday I was in the Niagara Glen Nature Reserve with my wife. We went for a nice long walk down to the edge of the River Niagara. I noticed that there were quite a few people bouldering there. They had their bouldering mats there on the beautiful limestone that you've got there. So I have to confess, while I hadn't brought my climbing shoes, so I didn't do anything too difficult, I did have a little bit of a grapple with the beautiful limestone there. Very, very good rock. Might have to come back. And then on Thursday, I'm popping over to Lake Jacob, where CNIB has a summer camp, and apparently they've got a climbing wall there. So if the kids at the camp will allow me to play on their wall, then I might be throwing some moves vertically up and down that. So we'll see. But I think this is what's known as an exploratory trip. I might have to come back with my climbing shoes and my harness.
Dipping your toes, so to speak, just dipping your toes up there in the Muskoka. I've had the opportunity to visit Lake Joseph a couple times, where the CNIB camp is located. I'm a noted indoorsman, but even as an indoorsman, I had a fabulous time up there at Lake Joe. Red, it's so nice to get to finally meet you in person, spend time with you in person. All the best on the rest of your trip, safe travels, and looking forward to a brand new season of My Life in Books.
Dave, thank you very much. It's already been a high point coming here.
That is Red Széll, the host of My Life in Books. You can catch that show weekdays, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on AMI Audio. And as I mentioned, you should track that down on your favorite podcasting platform as well. Don't forget to rate and review and share it with friends. Do you want to dive into more conversations like this? Watch Now with Dave Brown weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on AMI.TV or download the podcasts wherever you listen. Do you want to dive into more conversations like this? Watch Now with Dave Brown weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on AMI TV or download the podcasts wherever you listen.